welcome Helen McBreen back to the podcast. Helen, you're a partner at Atlantic Bridge,
Yes.
based in Dublin, and responsible for the seed fund.
That's correct. So Atlantic Bridge, we're based in Dublin. We're a global fund though. We have over 8 funds under management, 1.3 billion. The firm overall from a sector perspective is investing in deep tech companies. We also have a seed platform. That's the area of the business that I manage. And we've raised over 125 million to invest in pre-seed and seed stage companies in the Irish market.
So you have 125 million to deploy just in Ireland or across Europe as well?
So the fund is called the University Fund actually. This is its second cycle, so this is the second fund with a similar mandate to invest in the outputs of Irish research predominantly.
Are most of them university spin-outs? Is that really what you're targeting?
Yeah.
And you don't really have a management team, do you, coming out of...
The management teams of the companies can be very nascent, very raw. Very
tech-focused, I guess.
Very tech-focused. So our value add in Atlantic Bridge is to ensure that we build the strongest management teams from the outset.
So you're quite a hands-on investor.
Very hands-on. And you need to be to go into this space.
Sure.
Okay, we're a very strategic GP when it comes to investing in this whole area of tech transfer. And there's many funds across Europe that have these relationships with institutions, research institutions, such as Fraunhofer or IMEC, Delft. There's many in the Nordics as well. And for many years there was never a fund like this in the Irish market that was being managed by an arm's length GP, because you needed to kind of have that independence for the investment decisions to be made, but also a GP that had the skills and the networks to get the right teams in place for these companies and have the networks to scale those companies into wider markets, which predominantly would be in the US.
The people who spin these out, who are probably PhDs or of some sort, can they become good CEOs?
Yes, they can. They can. We predominantly would back first-time founders, and in many cases those CEOs have the right skill sets. They just may not have had the opportunity to put those skill sets to work. And what we do is guide them towards becoming a successful CEO. It's not for everybody, okay? So you need to have those kind of entrepreneurial skill sets from the outset. And in some cases, those skill sets will only go to a certain phase of the business when somebody else who might have a scaling experience might come in to lead the company. But we have many, many examples of the CEOs that have come from the PhD postdoc level, and they're still the CEOs of very, very high scale, high potential businesses in our portfolio.
The university generally owns the intellectual property of whatever's being spun out. How do you sort out the cap table? Who owns what?
There's a protocol in most European countries to manage IP, and that's a national protocol with a set of guidelines and rules around how intellectual property is managed. And the University Tech Transfer Office would follow that guideline to ensure that they're following best practice when it comes to equity stakes in businesses, and that the transfer of IP into a company is smooth in terms of what that license agreement might be. So we don't get involved with that negotiation. That's between the team, the spin-out team, and the university. But typically a university would take somewhere between 10 and 15% upfront, which is fully dilutable as the company scales.
They're ordinary shares, basically.
They're ordinary shares. Yeah. They're founding shares. They're ordinary founding shares. Yeah. And then there'll be a license agreement that will have some milestones attached to when the license is fully assigned into the business.
So that means that will the university receive royalties, or will they only get the increase in value of their equity?
It varies. It can vary depending on the business type. So our sector focus is quite broad in that we do deep tech, but we also do life sciences, and for those reasons you might get different types of royalty agreements in place.
What are the exciting areas? What innovation do you see coming out of universities?
There's just endless investment opportunities within universities. I've never had a situation where our pipeline hasn't been both varied and full of different opportunities. What can vary is the quality of those opportunities and when the market might be right for them. But we have a very, very strong focus in Ireland in the area of health tech, particularly medical devices. We have a very significant global cluster in the west of Ireland, which includes universities, accelerators, corporates, and a whole supply chain to manage manufacturing for medical devices. A number of our strong companies in our first fund have come from that ecosystem. We also have a huge opportunity in the area of AI. We have a number of very strong research centres in the Irish economy that are producing really strong spin-outs and companies from those research institutions. Cybersecurity is another one, and also semiconductors. And these are all the sectors that Atlantic Bridge has been very focused on actually for a number of years. So we're now seeing companies that we've invested in at the early stage being funded on through our growth platform as well.
You're investing at a very early stage, so it's going to take a long time on average until you can get some kind of liquidity event. Does that mean you have a different fund structure? Your fund is longer, or is it the standard VC 10 year?
It's the standard, it's 10 and 2.
10 and 2.
So we are in the 7th year of our first fund, and we have identified a number of very strong value drivers from that fund, and we would have expectations over the next number of years that those companies could achieve very strong exit opportunities. Look, at each company is going on their own path, but we'd think that that's pretty standard in VC, that somewhere around year 9, year 10. So it is a little bit later, that is for sure, than a growth fund where you might expect liquidity in a much shorter, sub 5 year turnaround. So it is patient, and you have to be patient, and you have to work with the companies to ensure that they go on the road for scale and manage all of that risk.
Are you generally optimistic about innovation in Europe, and particularly in Ireland?
I think you have to be to survive in this world. But no, I am. And look, at the markets haven't been great. It's not easy for GPs to fundraise, and it's equally not easy for entrepreneurs to fundraise. But investments are happening, deals are happening, and the best deals, the best companies will be funded. It might take longer for companies or for funds to do diligence on companies. You might have various conditions to be met before those deals happen, but there's a lot of dry powder. Some firms are being quite cautious, and that's fine and understandable given the market conditions. But at seed stage, knowing that you have to go on a long route, there should be no reason for you not to make those investment decisions today.
And thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, David.